Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of Short Stories. Tonight we have a story called By Curios, written and narrated by me. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave any comments, feedback, love it, hate it, let me know in the comment section below. Dan looked at the long dead bodies encased in front of him. He always hated the night shift, but doubly so when he was scheduled to clean the archaeology building. There was always an air of ominous suffocation at night. There could have been a million reasons for this. Maybe he was afraid of the bones of the long-dead animals, or maybe it was the new Mesopotamian exhibit. Odd things like that always used to unsettle Dan. It was difficult for him to imagine that the mummified bodies on the other side of the glass had lived and died thousands of years ago, only to be unearthed by pretentious college kids on a dig. He hoped that he would never be dug up and paraded around a display in 5000 AD. He smiled at his twisted joke. As he pushed his broom up and down the hallways, he noticed the flickering fluorescent lights above him. Great. Just another thing day shift decided to let me do for them, he thought. It was common to find little odds and ends that were left unfinished by day shift. He was sure that it was his supervisor, Jerry. In public sector jobs, politics was always at play, and he knew that he was on the chopping block. Jerry didn't like him, and he didn't like Jerry. The two were at odds so much that Dan was moved to night shift in an effort to encourage his resignation. But Dan always soldiered on with his duties. He made his way down the nearest staircase into the dark and damp basement. He reached the bottom of the stairs. His key ring jingled as he searched for the correct key. As he opened the door, he saw the dark hallway in front of him. There was scarcely a light at all, except for the red glow of the emergency sign about 100 yards down the hallway. Dan's hand slid up and down the walls in an effort to find the elusive light switch. His heart began to beat faster and faster as anxiety began to fill him. He thought he could hear noises in the hall, noises getting closer to him. Finally, he found the switch. In a frustrated fluster, flicked it. The lights illuminated the hallway. It was empty. His anxiety slowly left his chest as he let out a relief-filled sigh. Dan, what are you doing down here? A muffled and lisped voice spat. Dan jumped in surprise, turning around to see the pudgy face of his supervisor glaring up at him. Dan chuckled. Holy shit, Jerry. You got me good, he said. What are you doing here this late? The bald man simply kept staring at Dan through his oversized glasses, waiting for Dan to give him an answer. It was obvious he didn't care about Dan's question. I was just grabbing a new light for the second floor. There's a bulb out up there. It was obvious that his answer was unsatisfactory to Jerry. You should hurry up if you're going to get everything done, and no smoke breaks, Jerry said slowly as he looked at the ground. Jerry was notorious for avoiding any eye contact when he was upset or stressed. No problem. I'll see you around, Dan said, as he turned to continue to the supply closet. It was common to have mentally handicapped people work in the janitorial department, especially at public organizations like a university. He didn't mean to be rude to Jerry. He honestly didn't hate the man. But something always rubbed him the wrong way about how a man who was obviously not cut out for a job could easily get it, and because of his uncle being a trustee. Dan swallowed his pride, if only for the moment, as he rummaged through the boxes, attempting to find a new light bulb. He returned upstairs to the hallway and passed by the display cases, looking at his reflection in the glass. Something caught his eye. He suddenly stopped, staring at the reflection of a shadowy figure standing behind him. Slowly he turned around. Jerry, is that you? He heard no response as he turned to face the shadow stalking him. Nothing. There was no one in the hall with him. All he heard was the sound of humming lights. He thrust his head into the nearest open classroom, hoping to find Jerry playing a trick on him. Through the windows of the classroom, the orange glow of the outside lights illuminated the empty desks. Tightness returned to Dan's chest as his breathing began to increase in speed. Dan stepped out of the classroom and quickly popped off the case that contained the burnt-out light bulb on the ceiling. He hastily changed the bulb, and replaced the casing. As he was tightening in the last screw, something caught his eye again in the display case. He noticed the mummified remains that were standing lifeless just moments ago, when he had went to the basement, were now gone. He paused. A million horror stories played out in his mind. The Walking Dead, zombies, the mummy's curse. Finally, he wrangled his wandering mind. Someone must have stolen the mummy. The thing had to be worth something, after all. He hastily finished, grasped the burnt light bulb tightly as he ran towards the staircase again, hoping to find a supervisor and report the crime that had just taken place. He rushed down the stairs, moving faster than he had since he started his new position as a janitor. Upon reaching the bottom of the staircase, he entered the illuminated hallway. Running past the storage room, he quickly made his way down to the end of the hall and arrived outside the door labeled only Jerry. Dan began to pound on the door, hoping that his boss would still be there. There was no answer. Shit, Dan thought. He began to walk back down the hall. He retrieved his cell phone and began to dial 911 just before his finger hit the last number. Dan turned around and heard the door creak open. What? He heard Jerry mutter as he stuck his bald head through the door. Oh, thank God. One of the displays upstairs is gone. I think someone took it. I'm calling the cops. No, I'll do it. It's my job. You go back to cleaning. I'll come find you in a bit. Jerry looked angry. All of this was weird to Dan, and he couldn't make sense of it, which he was sure Jerry could see on his face. I said I'll do it. Go. Now. Dan slid his phone back into his pocket. He held his hands up, signaling his indifference to the situation. All right, you're the boss. Dan returned to his cleaning. For the next few hours, he swept floors, mopped entryways, and removed garbage bags from the trash cans. As he took his last load of trash out to the dumpsters on the loading docks, he scanned the surrounding area. When he was satisfied that no one was looking, he lit a cigarette and looked out towards the parking lot. There were no cars and no movement that he could see. As he began to wonder about the missing mummy, he suddenly realized that there hadn't been any police officers show up to investigate the crime. God damn it, Jerry. He threw his butt off the dock onto the street below and hastily began to toss trash bags into the dumpster. He ran back into the building as fast as his smoker lungs would carry him. Everybody knew that Jerry was a bit slow, but not following up with the call to the police after a theft was a new level of incompetence. As Dan descended the stairs, he wondered what could have caused Jerry to forget. There was no way that Jerry was still in the building at this hour. Regardless of his odd personality, it was too late for a day shift man to be working now. Dan thought to himself that Jerry had to have gone home to bed, but he would still make sure there wasn't some autistic trap that his boss had set for him. As Dan arrived at his supervisor's door, he fumbled through his keyring. There was no point in knocking. After what seemed like an eternity, Dan slipped the small key into the deadbolt lock just above the door handle. As he opened the door, he saw that his supervisor was not gone as he had thought. Sitting in a chair behind an outdated wooden desk, Jerry was holding a teacup to his mouth, staring in horror at Dan. Dan stood dumbstruck in the doorway as he saw into the depths of Jerry's insanity. On the desk, there was a lace placemat under a vintage teapot, as well as another teacup sitting across from where he sat. In the chair, as if the guest of some sick child's tea party game, sat the mummified remains of some poor Mesopotamian who was duct-taped to sit upright. Dan looked back and forth at Jerry, then the body, unable to process the sight that was in front of him. Only now did he notice the soft music coming from the vintage record player in the corner of the office. Dan also noticed a small, dirty mattress on the floor of the office, which was covered by soiled clothes. After a few moments of the men staring at each other, Dan finally broke the silence. What the hell is this? Jerry's eyes began to fill with tears and his lip began to shake. Please don't tell on me. I don't want to get in trouble again. Again? Dan asked. Last time this happened, my uncle made me quit my job and I had to come here. Dan stared at Jerry, who began to sob uncontrollably. In this twisted moment, Dan actually felt pity for the man. It wasn't Jerry's fault that he was a basket case. Dan thought about running for help, calling the police, and ridding himself of his deranged supervisor. He imagined not having to work nights anymore in creepy buildings. But then an idea entered his head. Jerry, I don't want to tell on you. Other people will be here soon enough, though. If you don't want to get in trouble, help me get this thing back in its case. Jerry stopped sobbing and looked at Dan like a child who had been spared a spanking. Really? Yes, really, Dan said. He sighed as he began to unwrap the tape on the mummy. But you have to be my friend from now on, okay? Jerry nodded his head enthusiastically, while letting out a small giggle. We can all be friends. You can have tea with us. Dan stared in disgust. I don't really like tea, but I do want us to get along as friends. As long as we're friends, I can't tell on you, and you can keep doing... Dan paused. Whatever this is. Dan began to lift the preserved corpse from the office chair it sat upon. The 1,000-year dust puffed up in a cloud as he put his arms around it. Dan could feel his stomach begin to churn as his face came perilously close to the body. Jerry jumped from his chair and began to cradle the body's legs as he helped lift it. It's good to have a friend, Jerry said. It's way harder to lift her by yourself. As the two began to shuffle towards the office door, Dan bit his lip in restraint. This guy was some prince, you dumbass, he thought to himself. He knew better than to stir up an argument at a time like this. He was sure that he was aiding in some kind of felony, even if there was no law against having tea with dead bodies. The two grunted as they carefully carried the corpse up the staircase and back to the display where it was stolen from. The two janitors slid the mummy back into its case. Dan looked at Jerry, who was staring at the mummy as it lay back. Jerry reached out his hand, touching the corpse's face, giving it a small stroke. I'll see you tomorrow, Sarah, he said with a longing in his voice. Dan still didn't have the heart to tell his boss. On top of being a necrophiliac, he was also a latent homosexual. It didn't matter to Dan at all in the end. He was just happy to have his handicapped supervisor end his imaginary vendetta with him. Besides, Dan thought, this wasn't even the weirdest thing he'd seen while working here. Thanks for sticking around and watching, listening, and enjoying the story with me, guys. Like I said before, leave any feedback below. If there's any short stories or ideas that you'd like me to try to flesh out, try to write a little bit about, leave them in the comments below. I could always use some new writing prompts for any short stories or flash that I want to come up with. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, click that little notification bell, and I'll see you next time.